everyone, and welcome to this Netacea webinar, Robot Guts, Dissecting a Malicious Bot. My name's Yasmin Dougal. I'm a technical writer and cybersecurity content specialist here at Netacea. Joining me on the panel today, we have Netacea's own threat research team, Matthew Gracie McMinn and Cyril Noel Tago. Matt is an experienced cyber threat intelligence professional with an MPhil from the University of Oxford. In his current role at Netacea, he researches and investigates the impact of malicious bots on online businesses and their customers, having previously worked for ReliaQuest and the world's largest companies responding to global cybersecurity incidents. Cyril spends his time researching, speaking, and writing about malicious automated threats and other cybersecurity topics. He comes from a cybersecurity consulting background, having advised financial service organizations on a range of technical and non-technical cybersecurity domains in a previous life. I'll now hand over to Matt and Cyril to introduce themselves and start the presentation. Over to you.
All right, thanks very much, Yaz. So yeah, pleasure to be here talking with you today. So today really we're talking about credential stuffing attacks, which are a type of business logic attack. Now, I do want to emphasize that business logic attacks are slightly different from your sort of traditional cybersecurity attack, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So if you're already aware of the distinction, please bear with me just for a moment while we walk through it. But essentially, a business logic attack is where an actor exploits the legitimate functionality of, say, a website or an API in order to perform a malicious action. It differs from your traditional cybersecurity attack, where someone is looking to try and perform a sort of exploit code or make things behave in a way they're not designed to behave in. So for instance, your traditional cybersecurity attacks may include things like SQL injections, where someone tries to input some code and manipulate a backend database in a way that the web application was never supposed to be able to permit. With a business logic attack, however, someone may instead put in, say, a stolen credit card. Now, your website's probably going to accept credit cards for payments, but someone using a stolen one is they're using that intended functionality in its correct fashion. They're inputting a legitimate credit card, but it's not their credit card they're inputting. That's a business logic attack. And what we've seen more recently is with the increase in automation and the move to a digital first on sort of social model, we've seen a massive increase in the number of business logic attacks recently. And so attackers being able to launch them and automate these attacks so that they can launch them very cheaply, very easily, and very, very effectively. One of the more common types of attack is your credential stuffing, where an attacker will take pairings of usernames and passwords, usually leaked onto the internet from breaches of third-party sites. So say another company you've never heard of gets breached, users' names and passwords get leaked onto the dark web or onto the open web. Hackers are constantly looking for these, picking them up, and then what they'll do is they'll use an automated tool, which we'll show you in a bit, and throw them against every other login page they can find on the internet, looking for places where your customers may have reused the same username and password over multiple sites. Now, of course, we always tell people not to reuse their username and password, but it's very hard for us to sort of enforce that checks without knowing all their other usernames and passwords. And even I fall sort of victim to this. I mean, the average person now has nearly, I think saw a report last year saying nearly 200 online accounts. That's a lot of usernames and passwords to remember, even with a password manager, and it's very easy to accidentally reuse them. I've been caught out myself there. I've been told, oh, actually, I've reused this password across multiple sites. And I know the dangers of this and try to avoid it as much as possible. So attackers are trying to exploit that human weakness of either intentionally using the same one or unintentionally using the same password across multiple sites. And it's very bad for businesses because even though you yourselves are a victim of this, as are your customers, there's not really a huge amount that can be done. It can have a pretty significant effect. And in fact, this effect is often underestimated.
So Matt, you mentioned that these credentials are available not only on the dark web, but on the open web as well. How easy is it for cyber criminals to get hold of those credentials?
Very, very easy. In fact, we'll show this later on when we get into the live demo, but I mean, you can just do a Google search. It sounds really bad, but quite literally, if you put the right terms into Google, and they're not hard to come across if you're on certain forums or so forth, if you look into, hey, I want to take over accounts, or I want to perform account takeovers or anything like that into Google, you'll get the information you need within a few minutes. It's one of the big problems with this type of attack is the very low level of entry. You think credential stuffing, automating these mass attacks, you need to know coding, you need to do this. Attackers have commoditized this. We've moved away from it being sort of an early stage thing where you need technical skills to do this to, oh, someone's already built all the tools, they provided all the ingredients for the attack, all you have to do is download them. and then you can launch the attack. If, as you'll see when we start the demo, if you were to start if you decided, say right now it's about 10:15 in the morning here at UK time, to say, hey, I want to launch a credential stuffing attack against site X, I would estimate by 11 o'clock you would be running that attack. That's from a completely flat background of, assume you know no coding, assume you don't know how to launch this attack, you just decide you want to do it. That's how quick. It's not going to cost you a penny. It's all freely available. So it's really quite serious, this problem.
Yeah, scary. And yeah, very low barrier to entry.
Yeah, and of course, because it's all automated, you simply download all the tools you need, hit run, and you can go off and make yourself a nice cup of tea. Come back with quite a few breaches, probably. And, your success rate may be low. Success rates we see in credential stuffing attacks that we block, or when we've sort of gone through data sets that our customers have previously seen and asked us to analyze. So when we're then coming into work with them and start working with them, they ask us to look through and we're like, right, so their success rate was less than 1%. But if you try, say, 2 million accounts and each one can be sold for £1, that's a very quick way to make a few grand. It's not a small sum of money to make very, very quickly and easily. And with very little risk to the attacker as well. And if you do it against a foreign country, what's the chances of being extradited over that? Probably not much.
Quite low.
Yeah. So yeah, people get away with it, which is a bit annoying. So we need to do more about it. So last year we did actually a survey to sort of go a bit more into what the actual impact is to the businesses. We gave it a survey of 440 UK and US businesses, varying in size from about $250 million up to over $7 billion in size. And we asked them about various different bots, and this is all self-reported numbers. So bear in mind, this is attacks that they've detected and then been able to calculate the impact of. So they may well have been attacks they've not detected, so the actual cost could be significantly higher. But as a percentage of online revenue, account checker bots, those are the credential stuff bots we've been talking about, cost about 3.7% of annual online revenue. So for some of the largest businesses we spoke to, that was about at least $250 million. So for a quarter of those businesses, that was a rather significant sum of money. And this is, the business here is, their website hasn't been compromised in terms of its code's not being exploited as a vulnerability. No vulnerabilities have been exploited. Instead, it's a business logic attack. So the website's been used in its legitimate way. They've not leaked their user credentials. Someone else has leaked user credentials. Those passwords and usernames have been reused. So the business itself is also entirely a victim here. It's quite hard to deal with unless you're using sort of proper bot management. There's a few techniques and responses you can use to try and mitigate the risks of these attacks. But it's quite significant losses for very little effort on the side of the attackers.
Exactly. And I think when you said, it's the business that's the victim. Ultimately, they've done anything wrong. They've not leaked their credentials or customer credentials online. But for the customer, they're not going to think of the business as the victim, are they? They're going to be angry that their accounts have been hacked.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you go back here, you'll see that these are credential stuffing attacks against some businesses here. It's usually the business name that gets called out. This is the business, and people see that headline and they're like, that business is at fault for not protecting me, and their reputation takes a hit. And in fact, you preempted the slide there with the reputational impact of bots being quite severe. You can see account checker bots. Most people found that a sort of 76% drop in 76% of customers reported a drop in satisfaction, a noticeable drop in customer satisfaction as a result of account checkers hammering their sites. People don't, if you get breached, people are going to go, to be honest, even if my username and password are reused, part of me is going to think, well, you guys didn't do enough to protect me. You shouldn't have allowed someone else to use my username and password. You should have known it wasn't me. So I'm going to not use your service anymore because I don't fundamentally trust you anymore. I don't trust you with my credit cards. I don't trust you with my usernames and passwords. I don't trust you with my name and address.
Exactly. And that's when businesses are losing out to competitors.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's I think increasingly what we may see is businesses being judged and losing business to their competitors on their ability to deal with and respond to these attacks. I think we've started to see the beginnings of that over lockdown already. We're going to see more of it in the coming years as these attacks become more and more frequent and more impactful, and much more in the public eye as well.
Exactly.
So I think that brings us nicely into going into exactly how a credential stuffing attack works, Cyril. So did you want to walk the audience through this one?
Yeah, so we've talked about the impact so far, and I think the impact tells half the story. To really understand this, you need to understand kind of who is doing this and how they're doing that. And then you really realize how big a problem this is. So I'll start with the adversary profile. So who are the people who are generally launching these kinds of attacks? Now, generally, you'll have a tool that's created by someone who might have a moderate level of skill. They might be quite good at coding, but they're commoditizing that and they're releasing that. And the people who are actually using the tool, the people who are launching these attacks, generally are not that skilled. They have this means to create revenue for themselves quite easily and without skill, which is a problem, especially when you compare the disparity there with the businesses who have this high impact to them of these attacks. But how do these attacks actually work? So we'll step through kind of a kill chain, just the attack life cycle of one of these attacks. And then we'll go into a little demo to show stepping through these steps practically and show how it actually works. So a little bit of theory before. So these attacks normally start with resource development. So the adversary needs to acquire some infrastructure. So in this case, this is going to be that kind of the tooling they're going to use and the credentials, because these attacks are ultimately throwing a load of credentials against a target site. They then need to identify who their target is and do some reconnaissance. Now, generally, the reconnaissance is to determine what measures the site has in place and how to bypass those. Now, the tool users generally can skip this step because the tool developer has already done it. When you acquire a tool, it comes with the configurations to actually attack a site. So really, in this case, what the tool user needs to do is find a configuration that someone has already made. And we'll show you how that's done as well as we go through the demo. Next, they're going to go and try and bypass some defenses. So lots of websites use captures to try and protect against bots. We'll show how easily these can be defeated, but they might also try other techniques. So pretend to be humans, kind of mouse movements, use proxies so that they're hiding their IPs, and smoke screeners to try and other attacks at the same time to kind of distract from the attack they're doing. Once that's done, they're going to prepare all the tools together. So kind of take the shopping list they've already had and put it together and get ready to launch the attack. And then they're going to launch the attack, throw the credentials at the website and hope that some of them are valid matches, and then they're going to report out. So if it is a valid match, these are the ones that are valid matches, and then we can go and either sell those credentials on, or we can start using that account for ourselves. So that's how it works in theory. Let's see this in practice now.
So what I'm going to do is I found this wonderful website here that seems to belong to someone called Cyber Cyril. And what I'd like to do is see if I can credential stuff my way into one of the into the back end of it, into the login page, because I'm sort of looking at. So here's the login page for the admin portal, but I'm sort of looking at this, and I'm getting really annoyed by this sort of very secure, no hackers here. I'm a hacker. I just want to get in there and change that. So, Cyril, if I'm going to attack your website, where am I going to start?
Okay, so we talked about right at the start, infrastructure acquisition. So we need to get the tools for this. So let's go on GitHub and let's get this open source tool called OpenBullet. Now, OpenBullet is it's a web testing tool. It's a web testing automation tool, or at least that's how it's advertised. In reality, it's a tool used by adversaries for credential stuffing. Freely available on GitHub. So popular that they're on version 2. Now, adversaries in the wild are using everything from version 1 all the way up to version 2. But this is the newest version out there, so we'll use this for this demo. Cool. So we've got the infrastructure. We need the combos, the credentials. So here, this is just a simple Google search away, and what you'll see here is lots of advertisements of combos that can be downloaded. Now, a combo is a username and password pair. So as you can see, you've got here, some of these are 600,000 combos. The smallest one there, I think, was over 100,000. So you can see already even with a very low success rate, there's the odds are so far in the attacker's favor, right? They've got so many combos that like even a 0.1% success rate. I'm not going to try and do the math now, but that's still going to be quite a high number. So we've got our credentials and we've got our tool. So I mentioned earlier that normally, if you're kind of going strictly through the kill chain, you'll have to then do some reconnaissance and determine kind of how that target works and use that to tailor your tool. But in most cases, the adversary will find a config that someone's already made. Again, simple Google search away. Here are configs that people have made for OpenBullet 2, and these configs are going to tell the tool exactly how to attack that website. So you can see lots of big name brands here, just a Google search away. All right, so I think we've got our infrastructure, we've got our credentials, and we've done our reconnaissance, we've got our tool. Let's show how we put that all together.
Yep, excellent. So I've got my OpenBullet open here in my browser. It can run in desktop or it can run in browser. We've set it up in browser here. And yeah, so where do I go next, Cyril?
All right, so let's start by bringing in our credential list. So in OpenBullet 2, credentials are and combo lists are put in a section called word lists. So we're going to add a new word list here, a new credential list into this. We're going to browse one we downloaded earlier. So here is our 5,000 ultra high quality mega combo list supreme. The
more adjectives, the better the list is, of course.
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Just change that to credentials.
Yep. So we're going to upload that, and we've got our credential list added. So we've already got our infrastructure and we've got our credentials added. Now we need to actually add the configuration. So this is how we're actually going to attack the site. So we could, write our own configuration, but it's much easier just to download one and edit it. So here we can see this can be written in a code type form. And essentially what this is doing is it's going to send a login request to the website, and it's going to throw the usernames and passwords into it. And then it's going to determine from the responses whether it's been a successful or a failed login. Now, for an adversary who is very unskilled, they don't even need to look at code at all. They can go into this stacker view, which shows in nice, easy blocks kind of this attack. And if, for example, I wanted to bypass some defenses, so my super secure site is really secure. I don't need any captures or any defenses because it's that secure. But if I did have a capture now, I wanted to solve it, I can just easily add a block in here to solve a capture. So for example, page capture, you add the block here, and then that would normally be farmed out to a capture solving service. So whether that's an automated service or a capture farm, so sent out for humans to solve the capture for you. But in this case, we don't need to do that because it's a very secure website that doesn't need capture. So we have our config, and we are all ready to go. Now, if we were doing this in practice, we'll probably add some proxies in to kind of hide our address. For the purposes of this demo, we won't do so, but here we can show that the tool does have the capabilities to add proxies. But for now, let's start a job. So let's actually attack this site. Here we're going to create a multi-run job. So this is essentially going to use the config that we created earlier, which we're going to add now. It shows a nice warning there that using code that you haven't written yourself might be dangerous.
No honor amongst thieves.
No honor amongst thieves, exactly. We're going to add the word list we downloaded earlier as well. So here's our 5,022. So we've got 22 free combos in this word list. Very, very nice of them. And we're going to select the number of bots. Should we go for 100 bots? So the higher the number of bots, the quicker this attack will run. As I said before, we're not using proxy, so we can turn off some of the proxy behavior. And then in terms of outputs, we can decide which outputs, where we're going to output it. So we can output it to Discord or Telegram group, or just to our own custom webhook. In this case, we're going to just add it just to the normal database. And on proxy sources, we can take off that proxy group. They're right at the bottom, proxy sources. Yeah. All right, so let's create a job.
Right, so this is the point at which I go and make myself a cup of tea, I think, isn't it, Cyril? So be back in a minute.
Yep, and as you can see already, it's already tested 500, 600 or so of these credentials like that. That's how quickly this is running. Already no hits so far. So far the credentials it's tested haven't matched my site. Oh look, so it spoke too soon. So in fact, it has found one of my passwords, my password actually, which is actually a very secure password. If you think of any measure of password security, you're going to say that's a secure password. It's long, it's got a mix of uppercase, lowercase, symbols, numbers, like great password, except I've reused it somewhere. And that kind of shows the difficulty here, that no matter how secure your password is, if you reuse it, you can still fall victim to a credential stuffing attack. Password complexity isn't the answer to this problem.
And I think that's something that's quite drilled into us as employees, especially, use a password that ticks these boxes, like you said, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, numbers, etc. And it's sort of, I think, the more complex the password, the less likely you are to be hacked. Whereas actually, like you said, nothing to do with that. It's completely down to password reuse. Something that strikes me as well, just watching this, is how user-friendly OpenBullet is. Like you said, it's so easy to follow the kind of step-by-step process to launching one of these attacks. And like Matt said before he went and got his cup of tea, very, very, very quick to execute.
Yeah, definitely. And this is by no means like an optimized config, right? This is a quite basic one, but it's going through quite a lot. If you see at the top right, you've got kind of 921 kind of checks per minute, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of you can extrapolate that and see just how quickly you could check like quite a few combos. But yeah, once we've kind of got this output, so we've kind of got these successes, and you only need like one hit, right? You only need one success to be able to breach one account. That's for you. Great. Yeah, you might start with a 5,000 list, which you downloaded for free, but now you've got a monetization route. You've got some revenue coming in just from that one hit. So the odds are so firmly stacked in the adversary's favor there. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I'm very nearly done now already, and that's using only 100 bots. Obviously, I could have put 1,000, 10,000 if I really wanted to shoot through this as fast as possible. I'm doing a sort of slightly more of a low and slow attack on your website there, Cyber Cyril.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and you could go even slower, right? You could literally run it at 10 bots and try and kind of just try and avoid any detection, which is looking for a quick change in number of attacks as well.
And my browser has crashed. There we go, it's back. Yeah, so slight technical difficulty there. So the OpenBullet was working fine. My browser was not. But there we go, it seems to be back up and running now, and it's just jumped up a bit more. And
I've just seen another hit.
You hire another admin there, Cyril, who's perhaps not as security conscious as you are.
Yeah, my admin is definitely getting fired for that. That is a very poor password.
Yes, password 1. I feel like being an admin today, actually. Yeah, this will be fun. Let's see. What can I do now?
So, as you can see, once you've got access to the site, you can do whatever you want on that site. For kind of customer accounts, you can try to make purchases or resell their account. In this case, MGM is defacing my previously very secure website. Thanks, mate.
You're welcome.
Like a kind of cyber graffiti.
Yes, yeah, very much so. Which is a small use of what I could have done here. Of there's a lot of other things I could have done with the admin account, and obviously this is a very simple sort of, if very insecure website. But if this were a different type of site, say it was an e-commerce site, and I got into a customer account, I can make purchases, I can commit fraud. I have access to that. If it's a bank account or something, I can start transferring money out. So obviously there's MFA controls and so forth in there, but more advanced attackers have got ways around that. And I mean, a common response to this, Cyril, isn't it, is just to, when someone accesses an account in a way that's not normal, they would say, or a company suspects that there's been an attack on an account, they'll send an email saying, hey, we've seen a suspicious login. Was this you? Please, could you confirm it? That email takes about 10 minutes, but I think you've got to say a script from another attack here, haven't you? We pre-recorded some videos because of the issues of doing a live demo, so just in case it went wrong, we had some videos there. It all seems to have worked out all right, but yeah, we've actually got a proper config here for sort of a proper site here. And do you want to walk us through it, Cyril?
Yeah, so the demo we used, we created the config to attack my site, because I don't think anybody outside of us knows about my super secure site or wants to actually hack it. But we thought we'll actually go through a real life config and just show some of the elements of it. So generally they start with just a little bit about kind of who wrote the config and kind of recommend the amount of bots to use for it, whether usually to use proxies, etc. Just like some preamble. Then it goes into the meat of it. So in this particular config, it's sending a GET request. So it's going to the login page and it's passing some header information there, especially if you can look like a user agent information. And then it's passing from the website some tokens, so in particular your cross-site request forgery token and a state token. Next is sending a post request. So now it's going to try and log in into this website, taking a username and password, so that'll come from your combo list, and then passing through the state and the cross-site request forgery tokens back in. And then again, we've got the header information coming through there, and then using the referrer from the target site, so it looks like a legitimate post request. Next is checking to see if the attack has been successful or not. So looking to see what values it gets back to determine whether the credentials are valid or not. And then here, very interestingly, it's then looking for successful attacks. It's looking at kind of how many reward points the customer has and pulling that amount out. Now, this can be used by the attacker to then use those reward points themselves, but more commonly they can resell that account on saying, we've got this account with this many reward points, sell it for a fraction of the value of the reward points. But that's very easy monetization for them, and they don't actually have to go through kind of the added trouble of committing fraud on that customer account themselves. So they're kind of less likely to be to be caught by or prosecuted for their crimes. So it's an easy way for them to create a revenue stream for themselves and limit their risk.
And
sorry, Matt. So no, I was just going to say, some do actually accept the risk, though, don't they, Cyril? And I was saying it takes, say, 10 minutes for someone to get an email and then respond to it, change their password and so forth. But in that, as soon as someone's into that account, if they're doing this fully automatically, 10 minutes is far too slow, because this will happen in a second, and they can do things like transfer reward points away. They can make purchases on the account. They can be very, very quick and automatically, and they can pull out things like usernames, addresses, delivery addresses, some whatever payment info may be saved in there, and start pulling out information that can be later used in other fraud attacks or in subsequent attacks such as social engineering and that sort of thing.
I was going to say, with loyalty point fraud as well, it's kind of a double hit for the business, isn't it? Because they kind of lose those points out of their ecosystem, as it were, and then they're kind of repatriating the customer accounts as well with those points, or the value that they were worth.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Yeah, I think that sort of brings us up to the summary, really, which is that this is increasingly common, isn't it, Yaz? It's something we're seeing more and more of. We've seen more businesses going online, and many of them as well, smaller businesses that perhaps don't have the funding or the expertise in-house in order to provide sort of high level of cybersecurity, don't necessarily understand the threats and so forth, so they're not ready to actually respond to these. And that means that they're either easily breached, so usernames and passwords for credential stuffing are being leaked from these organizations, unfortunately, or they themselves are targeted with these attacks and another point of vulnerability for their customers. You know, and these attackers, we're seeing this sort of move away from the sort of genesis. If you have like for those of you familiar with Wardley charts, you have the sort of genesis of the bot market years and years ago. We're now really seeing it getting to the commoditized stage where, you know, bot developers and bot users are very much separated, and you've got developers who are building these bots and then selling them, and you know, they're competing with each other to build the best bot for these sorts of attacks. OpenBot 2 is completely free, of course, so credential stuffing tools tend to be a bit freer, but bots in all sorts of areas, you know, we're seeing them hitting all sorts of targets, and they're very much up with the latest sort of trends. You know, scalper bots are very good at noting sort of supply chain issues and so forth, making sure they're jumping on those to try and exploit those. Scraper bots are being used increasingly for everything from trying to identify where vaccines may be available to gathering business intelligence information and so forth that can be used to competitive advantage, automating price changes and that sort of thing to make sure you're undercutting your competition, all the way through to all sorts of other bots, arbitrage bettings. You get spinning bots, which stock items into inventory and just hold on to them, so essentially performing inventory hoarding attacks. And then carding bots for when you get back into this more credential stuffing style, illegal sort of activity, people using the stolen credit cards I mentioned before. They're constantly coming up with new attacks. We're seeing more and more bots in the NFT space, actually, which seem to be built on the back of the old eBay bots.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's becoming an increasingly professionalized business, I suppose, landscape, I mean, and it's starting to, I think, infiltrate the everyday, the lives of ordinary people, with more kind of, say, ordinary people, more ordinary people using bots, understanding bots, the barrier to entry being lower, more businesses being online, like we said. It's something that's increasingly kind of infiltrating our day-to-day, I think.
Yeah, I think especially with the low barrier to entry, right? So we showed a shopping list earlier. Everything that we looked at, everything that we used to launch that attack was completely free. Like if you think of cost, the only cost to the attacker would have been time, and that time would have been 20 minutes tops. Like you can't get a lower barrier to entry than this. Now, fair enough, if you were kind of launching this against a normal website instead of my incredibly secure website, incredibly secure website, you may need to use some proxies to hide your IP, which may add a small cost, but again, that's still incredibly low. And if you wanted to bypass some captures, the capture solving services would charge you a small fee, but again, incredibly low. And then when you look at how easily you can monetize it, right? You can sell accounts, streaming services, for example. If someone wants to watch a movie on a streaming service, they can either pay a subscription to the streaming service for X amount, or they can pay someone who's got an account on that a fraction of that cost, and still the adversary has got a very good money maker scheme for those, easy revenue for them. So it makes economic sense for adversaries to launch these attacks. So they're not going to go away anytime soon, unless we can properly defend against them.
Definitely, and like I said, it's becoming so increasingly professionalized. It's a scary time, I think, for the bot landscape. But yeah, I think that's about all we've got time for today. I think, Matt, you need to probably remove the graffiti tag that you've left on Cyril's very secure website, and Cyril probably needs some password changing.
And fire my admin.
Exactly.
Oh, I didn't mean to get anyone fired. Oh dear, that's
that was your master plan all along, Matt.
I feel really bad. No. So I still haven't finished my cup of tea, if you're wondering how long that attack took. It's still going.
Exactly. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks to Matt and Cyril on my panel. If today's session has got you thinking and inspired you to ask more questions about bots, or even directly about your own bot management strategy, please do get in touch with us at hello@netacea.com. Thank you so much to Cyril and Matt again, and I will see you next time for the next Netacea webinar.